Fast X is directed by Louis Leterrier and stars Vin Diesel, Jason Momoa, Michelle Rodriguez, and among others. And this is the 10th film in the Fast and Furious franchise. And in this story, it deals with Dominic Toretto and his crew pretty much being hunted down by Jason Momoa's character, who wants to get revenge on Toretto based on the events that took place in Fast 5. And it's up to Toretto and his crew essentially trying to stop him as the things go on their own, where Toretto and a lot of the crew basically get separated in a lot of ways, and it pretty much becomes like Avengers Infinity War. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, this movie was directed by Louis Leterrier, who I haven't seen much movies of other than The Transporter 2 and The Incredible Hulk, which I enjoyed The Transporter 2. I thought it was a lot of fun. The Incredible Hulk I liked, but I didn't think it was one of the best MCU films. And with this series, this is now basically the 10th film, or the 10th main film in the franchise, and it's also the 11th film overall if you count Hal, Hobbs and Shaw. And pretty much going into it, as a longtime Fast and Furious fan, I was interested to see where it went. But at the same time, it was one of those cases where I didn't really know where else they're going to go at this point with this franchise, because you got to remember, this started out with basically a series of movies that were doing nothing but racing, a lot of their films. And there were always heists that were involved in a lot of the other series, but it just seemed like after Paul Walker tragically passed away, may he rest in peace, that I didn't really know where else the series was going to take it, because it really felt like there was really like how much more story can you really crank up, and how much more ridiculousness they could really do with the series. And so I've come to embrace that for the longest time, because I know that this series gets made fun of for being too off the walls, of being taken logically out of the door and stuff, and taking all the laws of physics completely out ever since the beginning. But I've come to always accept that, and I've come to enjoy them for them being just entertaining for what they are, and just always looking forward to see what they do. But in my eyes, if they ever really did wanted to completely cop off the series at a good note, I would have ended it at 7, because I think the first 7 movies, well, minus Tokyo Drift, I think they still probably could have ended there with their own, way of saying goodbye to Brian, and then pretty much not having the series continue. But ever since 8 came out, I've come to accept that what the movies are doing at this point, and trying to see where else they're going to take it, because they are still, the movies at this point I think have become self-aware parodies of themselves that I still get a kick out of when I watch them. And so going to the trailer to this, one of the things that did get me the most and curious about was having Jason Momoa playing the villain this time. And upon seeing the film, I can say that this was quite a lot of fun. There are quite a lot of things that really kind of take the movie back back on as far as that kind of level, as far as writing and stuff, that really makes it a far less of a great film. But I still think it was a step up way more than Fast 9, and it definitely holds the ground, especially with Jason Momoa. But to get my pros out of the way, I'll say that I thought the cast in this were all great as usual. Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez, everyone is great as they are. And there's also some really big standouts from the other returning members, like especially with John Cena, where unlike his character from Fast 9, it seems like in this one he was more playing his performance off of like he was as the Peacemaker in the Suicide Squad. And I thought he was a lot of fun in this, especially with his chemistry with Dominic's son in this. I thought their banter back and forth was a lot of fun. And the biggest thing still the most, surprisingly, is, what do you expect? It's Jason Momoa. He really not only captures a lot of the great villain that you come to like from this type of performance, but he cranks it to a whole new level where, it's like a mixture of the Joker, a 90s villain from the movies of Broken Arrow and Face Off, that kind of really energetic, you could say campy, but at the same time I say you can tell he's having a lot of fun with the role. And I really enjoy that with this character, because he can be vicious at times, but at the same time he's just having such a blast in this that I couldn't take my eyes off every time I was watching him on screen. And he really levitated a lot of the energy that the series really needs. And I think actually out of the villains I've seen so far, he's definitely probably my favorite, I think, or at least one of my favorites of the overall franchise. So he was outstanding in this. And then the other biggest praise I got to reach the most is a lot of the epic, set pieces they have in this. Especially, if you've seen from the trailers, you have a lot of that whole sequence that involves where they're having to basically try to stop a bomb from going through the city, and try to basically, go through Rome and stuff. I thought that was really not only really well crafted and well timed, in the way that they really set the sequences up and stuff, but knowing that this is basically stuff that would never happen in real life, and it's such a ridiculous level, I still got a kick out of it. You know, that sequence is just so much, really a lot of fun to watch. And then the way that also goes too with a lot of the fight scenes, they're well choreographed as well, especially the fight that we get, you know, like you've seen in the trailer from Charlize Theron coming back and also fighting Michelle Rodriguez, I thought was great. And then you also have, you got Jason Statham returning, but he kind of plays more of a cameo in this because he's not really, you know, much in it as much as I thought he would. And it has to deal with him pretty much having to, you know, go after his mom, the Helen Mirren's character, after she's get targeted as well. And so I think this movie consists of a lot of setup and stuff that really is leading to the next film, because they've said that pretty much this one is going to become pretty much a trilogy, kind of basically structured out like they did with the Hobbit films. And while I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea, as long as it works right, I do feel like if they would have made it maybe at least one more film, I probably could have seen it work better maybe that way, because I don't really know how they're going to do it with, you know, stretch into 3 movies instead of 2. But we'll see. But the other biggest praise I got to see going into that as far as setup is, surprisingly enough, the movie does get some mistakes in this that I actually did feel for some of the characters in this. And keep in mind that that's saying a lot, because we have seen countless other films where a lot of the characters can be in danger and stuff, and it won't be surprised if you have like some characters coming back in future films after this and stuff. And that's kind of also a pro con I have with some things that I'll get into later, but I can't really go into too much spoilers with. But I just like that they tried to really push in that kind of Avengers Infinity level where, you know, the thing is escalated at a very more, you know, serious route where the villain is trying to really show that he's not messing around and stuff like that. And so I really appreciate that they went with that approach. And on top of that, I got a really kick out of it the way that it's really well paced in that regard, because the movie does never feel boring. It, you know, it goes by at such a fast pace where, you know, everyone's having to go scattered around with doing their own missions and stuff. And there's also nice characters that come in that I thought were welcome faces that I enjoyed, especially Alan Ritchson, who he's most famous for playing that show Reacher on Amazon. I still need to check out, but I thought that he was really great playing as basically the one filling in for Kurt Russell's character from the other films. And you also have some like a lot of funny banter that I really enjoyed. You know, always seeing with Tyrese Gibson and Ludacris always bickering back and forth. Where at this point it may seem like it gets old, but I still do laugh every time, because when there is this running joke that they have where he's talking about trying to get a receipt from all the cash that they pretty much are going after and stuff, and that or all the cash that they're trying to spend and stuff, and I thought that was pretty funny the way it played out. Now, if I do have to get into some of my cons, I will have to say that, as you come to expect, the movie does take into that most ridiculous level where you see a lot of stuff that could not, and I'm talking about logically, really happen. But that's the beauty of it, because I think that there's just such a there is a self-awareness to it, that at this point, even the villain himself kind of mentions that they're pretty much, you know, he makes fun of the fact that, you know, Toretto has basically family members, including those that are not part of his immediate family and stuff. So there is a lot of great, you know, vibe to that. But at the same time, you could still see that when characters are pretty much going in places and stuff and doing stuff that you really would not be able to take seriously, it goes into that very superhero type of level that's very, you know, like a cartoon. You know, where you have cars driving off dams and stuff, and trying to outrun explosions. Like I said earlier, with the whole bomb thing that they're going to save and stuff. It is so out there and ridiculous, but again, that's just something that I can definitely understand the arguments for. But I was never bored by it. I still thought that I was still watching it in such entertainment that I was able to at least overcome that. Now, the things I do think that are pretty far-fetched is, there is another character yet again that comes back in this series, and I don't want to spoil who it is, but I just felt like the way that they kind of brought the character back, and this is kind of going into more of the overall problems with the film, is that things just happen conveniently, where it's like things are basically, you know, stretched, or basically all happening at once, trying to basically set up the next movie and stuff. But you get a lot of unexplained things that aren't really explored much, or they're either, you know, they're basically left in the gutter. Like, for example, where is Brian in all this? I mean, I know that it's hard to bring back Paul Walker because, you know, he tragically passed away, and may he rest in peace and stuff. But the fact that he's still around in this series, it does make me wonder, like, where is he in all this? Because if he is to make an appearance in the last 2 films, hopefully they at least have an explanation of where he's been and everything. Because the only thing I can guess is that there's a theory that's involved where supposedly him and Mr. Nobody, who coincidentally also went missing in the last film, they're pretty much on a mission together trying to, do something of their own. So if that's the case, I could probably see that working if they kind of explain that in the next film. But I'm not going to hold my breath because theories are probably not always true in some cases. So I wouldn't be surprised if they turn up something different than where Brian's at. And then the other thing too is that there's some other characters that they are come in, but then they're gone off screen. They come in and then they're basically gone. Like, with Jason Statham's character. And that's another thing, too, because Jason Statham is, like, doing this whole, like, thing where he's punching a guy that's in this body bag or whatever. And we don't really get an explanation of what all that was about. That's just one of my, like, kind of things that really hold the movie back because the writing is not very, good in this. To be honest, it's a very flawed screenplay that really is dumbed down. But because I was so entertained by it and the way that it really goes along with trying to set up with the next films and stuff, I'm still enjoying this franchise, but hopefully they really pull it off with trying to end it soon because I think at this point it's like I said, since after 7 they've really gone to the most ridiculous level that you can really expect at this point. And overall, I'm going to give Fast X a high average Joe on the Film Freaks meter. So for those of you who have also seen Fast X and also the other films in the Fast and Furious franchise, let me know in the comments of what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.